Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today in this session. In this entire session, we will talk about methods. Hi, my name is Nitish Kumar, and I'm a senior engineer in EMR Group, and I'm a Microsoft MEP. That is all about me. Now, hey Aditya, would you like to tell us something about yourself as well?
Absolutely, Nitish. Hi, everyone, once again. It's really great to see all of you here, whether you're YouTube or Twitch. By the way, while we're introducing ourselves and as we start off with the presentation, do let us know where you're joining in from in the chat here. Um, I am Aditya. I currently work as a developer advocate at Appwrite, which is an open source backend as a service platform. And I've been active around student communities, around hackathon communities, as well as more localized .NET communities now for the last 4 to 5 years or so now. So I am really excited to be here with you all as well. Nitish,
That's great.
why don't we talk more about what we're going to be discussing today now in
Yeah,
this?
so in this entire session, we will focus mainly on methods. If you have seen all the previous modules of this session, of this series basically, then we have covered so many basic topics. But now our journey is on the methods. So we will start what exactly they are, how to work with them, and how to use them. At the end as well, we will talk about one a good project, so which Aditya will present about that, and we will understand basically everything about methods. So let's start it. We want this session to be very live and interactive. So if you are having any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat section below. And don't forget to say hi to our moderator, which is Chris, and he is handling everything from the backend side. So please say hi to him.
Hi, Chris.
Now, let's start the learning about the methods.
By the way, yes, for anyone who's in the chat, while of course we discuss and present and follow along, you can also use this link here to follow at your own pace if you'd like. And these, of course, are lessons available on Microsoft Learn, which is a wonderful platform. It's in fact where I started learning about C Sharp and .NET as well. So do keep an eye out on it and go through the lessons there as well in your own time.
Yeah, that's great. So if I talk about the methods, so basically this is the main module that we will talk about. And if I scroll down a little bit, then you will see we are having multiple modules, right? So we will start this learning from this first one, how to write your first C sharp method. Okay, so if I click on the start button and open it in a new tab, then you will notice this is the basic information about the methods. And remember one more thing, before learning or understanding more about the methods, you must have some basic knowledge about the C sharp programming. For example, how can you create an instance of the object of a particular class, and how can, and basically some information about the data types, because we will use couple of examples as well over here. We will code live over here. So all these basic concepts are required in better understanding of all these things. So let's talk about methods and what exactly a method is. So in every program we write multiple lines of code, and there are some situations where we need to perform same task multiple times. At that time, if you are not using methods, you are simply writing your code, then you will write some duplicate code. And if you are using method, then you can extract all that common code, put that in a single block, and place it at a different place. Then you can use that method multiple times in your program. The best approach of the advantage of using methods is that your code will be more readable. You will not have any kind of duplicate code, and you will have basically, if there is any problem in that code, which always happens with the developers, so you know where you need to go at that time. So you can directly go to that particular method and just fix your problems. Now let's talk about methods in this one. Before learning about methods, first we need to understand how can we create a method. And to create a method, first we need to understand what is the signature of a method. To work with the method, to declare a method, to write the signature of a method, we need basically these three basic things. First is this return type, then the name of the method. So if you will just focus on this particular line, here we are having three to four basic things. First is this void. This void is basically the return type. This word is not fixed. You can have some different values as well over here, but it must be over here. Then we are having this name of the method. The name of the method is say hello. You can put any meaningful name over here based on the requirement of your method. And remember, over here we are using the Pascal cases. So in variables we use camel case, but here we are using Pascal. Although there will not be any error if you will use some other cases, but this is something that we always follow in C# programming language. Then we are having these parentheses, and these parentheses are something that are telling that this is a method. At the end we are having a semicolon, and that's it. This is how we declare the signature of a method. Now if you want to work with the methods, then this is not enough. You have to provide some body as well. And what is the body? The body is what exactly is the job of this method, so that we define by using these curly braces. So after a method you can define this body, and remember, in that body there can be only one single line of code, or you can have multiple lines of code, right? If you have written any kind of program so far in C# programming language, if I talk about the basic one, which is hello world, then you are already using methods over there. That console.writeLine, you remember that write line or write that you have used, that is a method. So in this video we will talk about how can you create your custom methods. That was a built-in one. Okay, to make
Nitish, so sorry to pause you there. First of all, awesome explanation. Can we zoom in a little bit, just so that it's a little better visible to our audience here?
is it better now?
I think a little more might be helpful if that's already.
Like this?
I think that should help more. Yes, that's great.
Perfect. Yeah. So let's talk about directly code. So I'll open my editor, which is Visual Studio Code. But by the way, you can use any editor of your choice, whatever we are talking about over here. You can use Visual Studio as well, or any other editor that you want to use. But here I will prefer Visual Studio Code. Okay.
Even
So
Vim works, even if that scares you. I know that scares me for sure.
so basically, this is my folder explorer, and at this place, I want to write all my code. So here I can simply use the command prompt, or if you are using, let's say, this latest extension from Microsoft, which is this C# Tab Kit. So you can create your projects directly from this Visual Studio, just like you are creating from the Visual Studio, right? So here you can click on this open folder, or you can click on this button to create a new project. So choice is yours. You can use any one of them. But here I will stick to the .NET CLI. Okay, so this is my CLI, and I don't know how to zoom this one. Okay, it is working fine now. So here I
Yeah,
will write some basic commands to create a first C# application. I'm pretty sure that you have done all this work in the previous videos as well of this session, of this series. But now let's create one more application over here. And for that, here I'm gonna write the .NET moniker, which is .NET, and then just write this new keyword. It means we are going to create something new. Now we have to provide what type of application I want to create over here. So I want to create a console type application. Here I'm writing this console, right? You can press enter over here as well. But if you want to provide your proper output folder, then you can define those things also over here. So here I'm writing this test o, and then the name of my application. So let's say it is test application, like this. Just click on this enter button, and let's see what happens. It is processing the post creation actions. This will take a couple of seconds, and we have everything, right? If I want to see all of them directly in my VS Code, then I can use the command from this code space dot. So this will open the Visual Studio Code editor directly. Let's click on this enter button. Here we are. Here you can see we are having this application, right? So this is the test application that you have just created. And if you would like to go directly inside this particular application folder as well, then you can, let's just close it. First I want to test everything. Let's go back to over here and just go inside that folder. But before that, let's see what exactly is the changes over here in my folder explorer. So here we go to a new folder with name test application, and we are having all the files. So basically, if I want to write my commands about the .NET, then I must be inside this test application. So that is why I'm doing it like this now. So let's go inside this test application and open the editor again. The enter button. There we go. And if I click on this program.cs, then you will notice we will have a very basic program over here, right? So I was talking about this write line. So this write line is a method that is provided by C Sharp and it is a built-in one. Now in this video, we will talk about how can you create your custom as well. If you want to run this application, then you can again use the .NET CLI, or you can also click on this button over here if you have installed that extension, which is DevKit. All right, let's click on this one. Let's just put both of them side by side, and here it is. So this will take some time. Basically, it is building.
Let's also do one thing in the meantime. Maybe if we can zoom in a little further within VS Code, just to make sure that
Yeah.
any text there is clearly visible, that will be helpful as well. Yeah, that looks good.
Like this. No problem. So we will use this command line tool as well, and here we can also run our application. So here I'm writing this .NET method, and then I can simply use these parentheses, right? You do not have to pass anything else over here. Remember, in the body we were using this void, and then you simply have to use the name of your method.
Nitish, hi. So
And
sorry. I
here
think
on
we
the
lost you for the
command line
last
screen, you
30
can see we are
seconds or
getting this
so.
message.
Uh, Nitish, hi. I think we just lost you for the last 30 seconds or so. Maybe a little internet issue. Could you
Okay,
just
am I back?
maybe take a few steps back? Yes, we can hear you and see the screen all properly now.
Sure. So here I was running this program by using two different approach. First, I was
Mhm.
using this VS Code, this button that is given to us by this extension. So if I'm clicking on this one, then you can see we are getting this message, "Hello world." On the other hand, if I'm running this program by using this command prompt, then I'm also getting this message over here, which is "Hello world," right? And again, I was talking about the methods. Like, if you are having a method, then there is no use of that method until you will call it. So after declaring a method, you have to call it, and this is how you can call it. To call a method, you simply have to use the name of that method, and you have to use the parenthesis, right? Now there could be different ways, the different types of the methods. For example, over here we are not passing anything in this method, right? So simply we do not have to pass anything while we are calling them. We can simply use the name and just the parenthesis, and it will work. So let's just copy this code, and over here let's just actually write it. So I'm going to remove all these things that we have, and let's just paste it over here. So what we are having a method which is say hello, and here we are just calling it. The message or the work of this say hello method is just to display a message, right? Again, I can simply open the terminal window, or I can click on this button. Let's click. Here you can notice we are getting this message, "Hello world." Perfect. Now let's talk about some more very interesting stuff. So let's say I'm having one more method, which is, let's copy this code and just paste it over here, and let's see what we have over here. So this time we are having an array of integers, and here you can see we are having 5 values in this one. Now, what if I want to display all these values on a console window? Then how can I do that? I can simply create one method, which is print array, and inside this print array method, I am using this for each loop, and basically I'm iterating all the values from this array, and I'm just displaying them on the console screen, right? There is one very important concept over here. There is no uh, problem in the order of the method. So if you are calling the method after defining it or before defining it, then it will work perfectly fine. So what does it mean? It means if I'm just using it over here, then it will work. There is no problem in that, right? But for the better understanding, it is always good to call it over here and just write all your implementations after it. Perfect. Now if I want to run it, then again, let's open the terminal window actually, and here I can write my commands, which is .NET run. Enter button, and this is how we are getting all the values on the console dot right line, right? So we are having all 5 values. If you will update the values, then you will get all of them over here. Now let's talk about some more stuff. Here are some best practices if you are working on the methods. So let's say I need to create a method which is going to display some values on the console screen. So what I can do, I can simply write this kind of method, which is going to be, let's say the first return type is void, and void means that this method is not returning anything. We will simply call this method, and it will not return anything. Simply whatever it needs to run, it will do, and we will not get any value, right? Then this is the method name, and these are some parameters. The parameters we will also learn in just a bit, but here let's say we are passing 3 values in this method. Now what we are doing over here, there is no problem in the functionality, everything will work, but the code readability is not very good, right? Here we are using ABC. So if I talk about this method, this is just the definition, the signature. What is the meaning of this method? It is saying we are showing some data. What data? That is the question. It is not clear, right? We are passing some values over here. This is string A. What is the meaning of this A? What would be over there, right? If I will write this show data method like this, then it is very much readable. Okay, let's compare it again. So we are having this return type. This is the name show data. Now we are using display date. It means we are going to display some dates in this method. And then what we are passing? We are passing month, day, and year. Basically, all the parameters are very much clear to us. So excellent. So always remember to use these kind of approaches if you are writing C# code. Now it is time to create your first method, and before that you must have prepared your setup for the development. You must have installed the .NET Core SDK. You must have the editor of your choice, and that's it. You don't need anything special. You can simply create your programs. Now let's say I want to create a program or a method to display some random numbers. So for that, let's just copy this code, go back to our editor, and let's just remove all these things. Here I'm having this display random numbers. Remember, you cannot have only the signature. You must provide a body as well, like this. And if I go back to the uh, this website over here, then you can notice this is how we are just creating the random numbers. We are using this random class. We are creating the instance by using this new keyword, and then we will use this random object, and by using that next method, which is this one, we will display some random numbers. Perfect. Let's just copy all of them, go back over here, and basically I'm just doing it to save my time, right? And now I will use this method over here like this. Remember, we have to call it, otherwise there is no use of this method. Perfect. Now if I will run this program, then you will see we will get some random numbers 5 times, because this is the loop that I'm running 5 times. Run it, and to run it you can use your .NET CLI commands, which is .NET run in this case. And here you can see we are getting some values. And remember, because we are generating some random values, so every time you will run this program, you will get a different output. Now let's talk about some exercise. So basically, this is something that you, So on this example, you will see the real use of the methods. So just to save time, let's explain everything over here. So in this program, you will see we are having some duplicate code, right? So this is something that we are having over here. The same code is also available at this place. So we are basically duplicating everything. And if I need to make some changes in this particular logic, then I have to do it two times. What is the better concept? The better concept is that I can create a new method and just extract that code over here and just simply use this method name to work on that particular concept. So how? Let's go directly at the bottom side over here. So what we are having this method which is display time. We are also having this method which is adjust time. And in this main program, basically we are just calling them display times. In the beginning one, if you will see the earlier one, we were just simply writing this entire code multiple times. But this is not what we do in any programming language. You write your code only once and use it multiple times wherever you need it. Right. Let's talk about, let's check your knowledge. So, hey Aditya, would you mind to help me on this one? So, basically, the first question is,
Absolutely.
suppose there is a method named convert currency, which is the following lines of code, a valid method signature. So, this is this the right way to define your method
I
signature? So, we are only having the
I
method
don't
name
see a
and just the
return type
parenthesis.
here. We
Right.
don't
So,
see
the
a
return
return
type is
type here.
missing.
So
Absolutely right. So the return type is missing. So this is not the valid one. If I talk about this one, the return type is still missing and we are having the body. And in the signature, we
yeah,
don't need the body. So what do you think
exactly.
about this third one?
I think the third one must be the right one.
Okay,
By the
let's
way,
try
in the
this one.
chat, if you want to let us know, you can
Yeah,
do so as well.
please. The chat is open. Feel free to write your comments.
Yeah, you might need 10 seconds or so there. But
Yeah,
yeah,
sure.
if
Let's take
anyone
it.
wants to,
Perfect.
yeah,
Let's talk about the second one. Suppose there's a method named update. So it means we are already having one method with name update and I want to call it. So what is the best way to call it? So we are having this var update, we are having this update with parenthesis, and we are having this void update with these parentheses.
my vote is the second one, but I want to see what people in the chat think and why.
Okay, let's talk about all of them actually. So
Yeah,
this var update, this is something we use to declare our fields. And remember, if you are using the var keyword, then you must define something on the right hand side, and then only this var keyword will work. So this is not something that we
yeah,
use for methods. For the second one, we are using the name and we are using this parenthesis. Yes, this is something that we use to call a method. Then the third one, this is the signature. This is not how we call a method. This is
we
how we
can't
write
have
a
a return
signature.
type. Yeah.
Exactly. So let's try this one and click on this check your answers. Okay, perfect. So everything is done. Let's click on this continue button. Perfect. So here is a very basic program to work with the method. So the program is basically we have to validate few IP address, and the condition over there is that it must be separated by dots. There must not be any kind of leading zeros, and the number that we are using in between the dots that must uh, lie in between this 0 to 255. So basically these are three conditions. So if I talk about the pseudocode of this application, if all these three conditions are true, it means we are having a valid IP address, otherwise we are having the invalid one. So what does it mean? This is how we can say it. So if the IP address consists four numbers, there must be four numbers, and none of the numbers should have leading zeros, right? So these are two conditions. The third one is that the numbers should range in between the 0 to 255. If all these three conditions are true, then we will display that the IP address is valid. Otherwise, this IP address is invalid. So if you will just notice on this pseudocode, what do you think? How many methods should we create, Aditya?
Um, I think if we need to validate all three parts of the IP address, I think three functions would be necessary that we validate in a certain main
Perfect.
function. Right.
Perfect. So basically, how we decide when should we create a new method? So if you are having a task, it should be independent, right? Even if it is very
Yeah.
small, and it is always good to create a method for every small task. So here we are doing three main tasks. First is we are checking this condition. It must consist four numbers. Next is that this condition basically, so we have to create three methods over here, right? And like this. So this is our program. So we
Yeah.
are having this validate length. then we are having validate zeros, and then we are having this validate range. So if all these three conditions are true, then we will display that this is a valid one. Otherwise, you can simply say that this is invalid. And I'm assuming that you have seen all the previous videos from this series, so you already have some idea about these statements, which is if and else. So if the condition that is written inside this if all of them are true, then we will get this output. Otherwise, we will get the output from this particular block. Perfect. Now we have to write the implementation of all these methods, right? Let's go back over here. Okay, so let's talk about this first one. So first we have to validate the length of the numbers. Remember, we will get the string as an remember we will get the IP address as an string. So let's say this is our variable, which is IPv4 input. If I want to check that there are four numbers, then what is the approach? So basically there are dots that we already know. So we can split that string by using this split method and by using this dot. So what it will do, if we are having excuse me, if you are having the IP address, let's say it is 1.1.1. Right? So it will, this split method will convert that string to an array of strings. So in this array we will have all the numbers, but that will be in form of string, remember. Now we are checking if the length of this address is equal 4. It means if there are exactly 4 values, then we can say that the length is 4. So this is how we can write the implementation of our first method. Now let's talk about the segment which is saying validate zeros. Now here we have to validate all the zeros. And how can we do that? So again we are splitting it, and basically this time we have to iterate all the items one by one just to check that if there is any zero or not. And how we are doing that, basically these split and the next method which we will use, which is starts with, these are something built in with the string class from the C sharp, right? So you don't have to write them, you can simply use them, it is already there. So the main purpose of split is to divide the string or split from a particular character. You can also write the string as well over here. Now uh, the type of this array is a string, so all the elements that are available in this array are of string type. And here we have to check if they starts with a 0. So we can again use that method from the string which is starts with. So we can check if the leading character is 0, then we can simply say that this is false. Otherwise we can say it is true. So if none of them will have the 0 in the leading, then we will get true. It means this method will work fine. Now we have the third one. In this third one, we have to excuse me,
We have to make an
this one.
update in the middle. Yeah. We'll have to return if it's caught at any of those points. So it's just sharing an update on this function. Yeah. So if
Uh,
for example, any of the number breaks the rule, we'd have to return as a false as well. Otherwise, it would just fall through and return a true every single time. So it just shows how we use the return keyword to exit out of a function and
exactly,
return.
exactly. Thank you so much. Yeah. So basically, let's say we are having four numbers, and the first number that is available in this array is having the leading 0. So if that is the case, then there is no purpose, there is no need to test all the remaining one, right? We can simply
Yeah.
return from at this particular place. So that is a great concept, and this is how you just focus on the code, and that makes you something a great developer, right? So if it is false, then we can simply return it, and the return keyword basically is used to execute from that particular method. So whatever you have written after this return keyword, this return is a built-in keyword from C sharp. So if you are using this return keyword, then none of the statement that you have written after this return, that will work. This execution will come directly outside from this method, right? Now let's talk about the third one. So here again we are splitting it, and again we are using this for each loop, and what we are doing, we are simply checking the range, right? So we are, and remember why we are using this int dot parse. We are using it because this is an array of strings, and we cannot compare an string directly with this number. First we have to parse it to a number, and that is why we are using this int dot parse. Perfect. So this is how you can write the implementation of all these methods, and just simply use them over here, and this is how you can create your actual program. Now let's talk about some more very great concepts from this method, right? uh, all the methods that we have seen so far, we are not passing any kind of parameters over there, and we are not even returning anything from there. So but this is not always the case. In some cases, you have to provide some values. For example, I want to create a method where I want to display some elements from an array. So in that case, you have to provide or tell that method that we are going to pass something in this. So by using that concept, you can pass some parameters. And if you are passing some parameters, then they can be of multiple types. For example, they can be of value type, they can be of reference type. And let's talk about one example as well over here. So methods with parameters. Let's quickly go with the example. Perfect. So let's say here I'm having a method which is count2, and I want to count, I don't know how many numbers I want to count. So basically this is something that I want from the user. So the job of this method is to display all the values, which is the maximum given over here. So if I'm passing 2 over here, then it must display till 2. If I'm passing 10 or 5, then this is the job of this method. The input depends on the user. So if we are achieving something like this, then we have to create a parameter over here. Inside this parenthesis, you can create n number of parameters over here, and remember, you have to provide the type of that particular parameter also over here. If you want to create a second one, then you can put a comma and you can write the second one. This is how you can create your parameters. And if you want to return something, then remember that void keyword. Instead of using this void keyword, you have to write the specific data type. For example, if you want to return an integer value from your method, then you can use the int keyword over here and you can return it. If you want to basically return a decision over here, for example, if let's say a particular condition is true or not after doing some operations, so in that case you can use a boolean keyword over here, and based on the logic you can simply return it. And remember, C# is type safe programming language. So if we are using the data type over here basically, then you must return something, otherwise you will get the error at the compile time. Yeah, that's all I guess from my side. Return type. Now we will talk about this very great project from Aditya. Hey Aditya, over to you. And in the meantime, if you are
Hey,
having any questions, please feel free to ask in the comment sections. We are here. Thank you.
thank you. I was just going to say we can take a few moments before I switch over to the guided project and maybe see if anyone has any questions. By the way, Nitish, can we just hop over to the presentation for a bit? I think I have a couple of slides there that we can share before we switch screens.
Sure.
So let's go to that presentation once. Yeah. So I think I see one question in the chat from Louise, who mentions why in that example the count2 method name is Pascal case. The reason that we use Pascal case for method names, and it was mentioned earlier as well, but the reason we do so is because Pascal case has been a part of C Sharp's coding conventions for a very long time now. Now you could use camel case or any other case that you like as well. It's going to compile as normal, but following conventions is really handy here because the moment you're collaborating with other people, right? Conventions help standardize the format and structure of your code base. And so, because Pascal case is the set convention for method names, it would make it a lot easier for people who you would be collaborating with to read and work through your sample as well. So it's not that the function has to use Pascal case, but it is the recommended convention.
Yeah, right. And just to add one more line over here, if you are using Visual
Yeah.
Studio, then you will get the suggestions from IntelliSense that please convert it to the Pascal one.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Let's go back to the project.
So yes. So by the way, if anyone does have questions, just keep them coming in the chat, and we will be definitely taking them as we proceed forward. Um, Thank you for that, Malaki. Yes, methods follow Pascal case, variables use camel case with C Sharp. Thanks for that. Now, with this guided project, I am going to be using Visual Studio Code and the .NET CLI. By the way, the .NET CLI is a wonderful, wonderful addition to the .NET ecosystem. I think it's been extremely handy for people working across different operating systems in different environments to work on .NET applications. I know I do use it a lot because I'm constantly working across WSL and Windows and GitHub code spaces and so on. So it's been really, really handy. Wonderful addition. So I will be using VS Code and the .NET CLI for the most part. If someone does want to work in an editor outside with Visual Studio, it's fairly standard. You should be able to create a console application and uh, build it and run it through Visual Studio. If you're using any other text editor, the .NET CLI will be necessary to use. But yes, I will be using VS Code here. Nitish, can we go to the next slide?
Sure.
So the project that we're going to be building um, is a petting zoo application. And what this application here that where we'll build will be used to coordinate school visits. So, for example, if we have a number of visiting schools, here's the scenario we have. We have a zoo which sees schools visit, um, and each of these schools will have groups of students who are coming to see. But the petting zoo has a specific number of animals that students can pet essentially. So this application here would be used to randomize our uh, array of um, animals that are available, assign them all to the groups, and print them. So we're going to be building this application as we go forward with the guided project. Uh, and yes, if you want to follow along, if you were already on Microsoft Learn, that is great. Otherwise, if we just switch back to the slide before, we have the link here that you can access to follow along. It will make life a lot easier. It's a great project. It's a fun project to get started with and helps understand how functions work. So, with that said, I think we should be all right to switch screens to my VS Code. Let's take a second. I'll just look at the chat in the meantime. Um, oh, I see we're having a little discussion on conventions. First
Yeah,
of all, thanks a
exactly.
lot to Louise and Maliki for the discussion you're all having. It's a really interesting discussion and always a debate that comes up when we talk about developer experience.
Right.
And yes, at times with different languages with their conventions, if you are constantly transferring between, I can relate with you, Luis, because I came from Java. I was studying
Mhm.
Java in school, and that's when I transitioned towards C Sharp for my projects and so on. And I think it took me a little while to uh, get a grasp of some of these conventions. But understanding and appreciating conventions is always very, very handy because each community has and each language ecosystem has their own way of interacting and um, being able to understand these conventions, apply them, only makes collaborating communication a lot easier.
Hey, Laurent, hi there.
Awesome. We've got my screen up now. So, with that said, by the way, if you were able to grab the guided project link, you can start or you can follow along. I am going to directly be building this project out with us within VS Code now. So one thing I'm going to do is I am going to shift my um, streaming platform to the right side. So if I'm looking at the right, it means I'm looking at the chat and interacting with all of us. All right. If I'm looking straight, it's because my code editor is present there. So I will be switching between front and right. But if I'm looking right, it just means I'm looking at you all. So as we saw when we were building any application, a console application particularly, the first thing we needed to do was create this application for us, right? And the way you can do that within your console is using the .NET new console command. Now, we also earlier added a -o and a directory, an output directory name. But in this case, I do have a directory preset already. So if you want to create the application within the same directory, .NET New Console will create a Hello World application using the available scaffolding. So I am going to go ahead and run this now. And as you can see, this creates a little project for us. It has the program file, which we saw earlier. It also has a CS file, which is a configuration file that we have that lets us know everything about this project. So what version of .NET it's using, what kind of output type it would have. If in the future you install any packages, which we're not going to be doing now, but as you go forward working with .NET, it's something you will come across. If you will be creating and installing new packages, they would all show up here. And this configuration effectively lets the .NET SDK understand, when it's building and running, what is a part of this project, what not. So if you need to exclude files, folders, if you need to include project, certain packages and so on, all of that information goes here. The .sln file is specific to Visual Studio. It helps Visual Studio understand what is a part of your project and create any compilation settings or any build settings. Like, for example, we're seeing a few debug and release settings here. This is specific to Visual Studio. So if you're not working in Visual Studio, you wouldn't need this file here. Now, we have this Hello World application here, which we saw already in the past, just as a test run. As a little ritual I have, I make sure to do a .NET run to make sure this is working fine. And everything's okay with my system. So looks like that is code. Um, I am going to remove this and we can then start building. So when we talk about this petting zoo application we have, let's see, we've got three major functions that we're working on, right? The first one was a function that lets us randomize our list of animals. Second function we talked about, as we talked about this petting zoo that we need, is assigning groups. And the third functionality that we talked about and then that we need to make is a it's going to be a print function that prints out this entire group for us. So that this is the essence of our application. We have three functions that we need to build, and then we will have any other functions that we need to call this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by creating our little array of animals first. This is going to be an interesting experience. I have not had to create an array of different animals in the past ever, which is honestly a little exciting if I'm honest. This is going to be an interesting experience. I do have a list that I already had saved for myself, so I'm going to copy it and bring it over because I know for a fact I would not be able to get 18 animals at this point that you can find in a petting zoo. So I have a list available here with me. If while you're working, if you want to use a different list of animals, you can very much do so as well. That is totally valid.
In the
By
meantime,
the
there is a
way,
question over here,
since
very
we
interesting question. So
oh,
to interrupt
okay,
Aditya.
yeah,
So Malik is
no
saying
problem.
that it is always better to use VS 2022 because it has all the templates for all the applications and don't use the code. So well, that is not true. If you are using that DevKit extension, so you will get all the templates by using the UI. You can also choose any of the template by using the .NET CLI. So it is not always true
The
that
CLI
the
has
Visual
all
Studio
of
only
those.
has
Yeah.
exactly. So it is not always true that Visual Studio has all the templates. It is everywhere, right? You can use CLI or you can also use the VS Code. If you are using that extension, you will get all the templates. Yeah,
So
please
the
carry on.
reason we are using code here is, and why I, while I totally understand the thought about using Visual Studio, I am personally very fond of it whenever I'm working on my projects. I
Same,
use
yeah.
Visual Studio as well. However, the benefit of code is that an experience that we show with code is not an experience limited to Windows. So, for example, if we have anyone here who's maybe using a Mac or who has Ubuntu set up, they're not going to be restricted in experience as to Visual Studio, because Visual Studio
True.
IDE is an experience that has been heavily focused on Windows. And yes, we have had VS for Mac. I believe in the near future it is going to be deprecated as well, if I'm not wrong.
Yep,
But
you're right.
VS Code is there to stay, and that is a big reason why the CLI has been developed and C Sharp DevKit has been developed. Like, for example, right now, the C Sharp DevKit allows you to have a solution explorer as well within VS Code, which uses the .sln files. It is growing to a point where MAUI development will be possible with the C Sharp DevKit with VS Code as well. So there has been a lot of effort to develop this ecosystem so that .NET development isn't just a good experience for Visual Studio users, it's a good experience for everyone around.
Right. And
With
we have the
that,
extension which is C Sharp Dev Kit. So we have a
yeah,
question how to use this VS Code with C Sharp Dev Kit. So this Dev Kit is simply an extension. You can download it from the marketplace. If you will just click on that extension tab of your Visual Studio Code, then you can search basically about the C Sharp Dev Kit and you can
here it
just search
is.
it and install it. Yeah.
Moving forward from there. So when we talk about this petting zoo audit, I have my list of animals now, right? Coming to the first function we have, the first thing we want to be able to do is randomize this list of animals, right? Within our list of animals, we want to be able to randomize this list. So I'm going to go ahead and do one thing. I'm going to start defining how we want to be able to do this, right? So one way to achieve this randomization is to go through this entire array and randomly swap each
Yeah,
animal
Aditya.
that we have
Sorry to
within this
interrupt.
list with
I
another
think we
one.
can't see your
Yeah.
screen. I'm sorry to sorry to interrupt, but I think we can't see your screen. Torrent, would you help? Yeah,
Oh, I
please. Now
think it's back
it's fine
up.
now. Yep. Please go ahead.
Thank you for that. Yes, one way to achieve this is by going through this list and randomly swapping with any animal that is present ahead of um, this particular animal, right? So, for example, if we take uh, current animal, the index of that as 0, and we take animal to swap with its index as 1, what we can do here is the way we would swap this is we would take. I think if someone's ever tried to implement bubble sort with any language in the past, I think the swapping logic might seem a little familiar. We're gonna go ahead and we're actually gonna have to save this in a temporary string first. I'm gonna go ahead save it in temporary string first. We're gonna save this with current animal. We're then gonna swap the current animal with the animal to swap. Uh, and lastly, we'll save that initial one, the one we stored in the temporary variable here with the original. So this would effectively swap the two animals as we have them. Now, what we want to be able to do is achieve this for every single animal, in the sense if we start at point 0, we can change it with any of them in the front. As we keep going through each animal within the list, we want to be able to do so again and again and again. And we don't want to just do it with the next one, because then that wouldn't really be random anymore. So earlier we saw a little function called a little class called random, um, which we will be using to swap animals now. And the way we will do this is we will have a for loop where I will shift our current animal and use it as an index. We will continue running it till it hits the length of this petting zoo, which at this point I know the length it is 18, but we should use these functions here because if, for example, our input array changes in the future, it's always a good practice to have functions of this sort available. And we will increment it one by one by one. And what we will do next is, of course, we need to cover this within, we need to encapsulate this a bit here. Um, and shifting this little variable inside as well. We will use the random class and the object of the random class that we have now to pick any random number between current and well, the length of the zoo. So this way, what's going to happen is we will be able to pick any random animal within this range that comes after the current animal and swap it with that. And ideally, what this would lead to is us getting an entirely random list of animals here for us, which should ideally work well. Now, considering this is set as a global variable for this um, class file, um, we don't need to have this as a parameter. But if, for example, this was a local variable within a function that you were using to call the randomized animals function, you'd have to return this out as well. For now, though, because it's global, we don't ideally need to do that.
And
Now,
just to add
the
one more
next thing
thing
we
over
want,
here,
oh yeah,
if you are using some latest versions from C Sharp, then you can use some new methods, which is shuffle method from the random class. So you don't have to write all these lines over here. You can simply use that method, and the elements of this list will be shuffled automatically. You don't have to write all these lines. Another is that,
awesome.
let's say here we are using this third party concept, this temporary variable for the swapping purpose. You can also
Mhm.
use the tuples over here to swap the values. So using that concept, you don't have to write these things, right? So this is just for the viewers, so they have to search about all these methods and they will learn it.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for that, by the way. Now,
Happy to help.
when we talk about groups as we form them for each class, as we said, if a school sends a group of students, and they're broken into multiple groups that people can interact with, that people can which would have a set of animals. Uh, One way to keep and structure these comfortably and easily is a 2D array. Um, so what the way a 2D array would work is that we'd have a number of groups and a certain number of animals for each of these groups. Because we want to evenly divide them, the 2D array works really, really well for us. So for the assigned groups, we're going to do one thing. We're going to take an output here. We will have a return value here where we will return a 2D array out of this once the groups are assigned, and we will take a number of groups from this for this particular function as well. But we will do something additional. So if, for example, this function is called with a parameter with any number we have, it would use that number as a group. However, if this function is called without any number and it just has empty parameters, it would default the number of groups to 6. So we have set a default parameter here for us, which is going to be handy. There is an issue with random. I mean, I'm not sure, like within the context, if we're finding an issue here, if you can let us know, that would be totally uh, helpful.
No problem. That's how the development work. You write the code, you build it. That's the purpose of the building the code. So you will get it over there. No problem. Just go for now.
So, as we assign, of course, since we do have an array that we want to return here, a 2D array, I'm going to go ahead and I will define a 2D array for us, which I call result. Since I mentioned what it's going to have is a number of rows, which would basically equate with the number of groups we have, and then the total number of animals is divided equally among this set of groups. The way we will create this array here is we will set it to have the number of groups and then divide the length of our petting zoo array by the number of groups. So this way, each group can have a number of animals, an even number of animals available to play with. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set a counter, and I'll set it to 0, because what we will be doing is we will be going through this group that we have, through this 2D array. We will navigate through it using for loops, and we will keep adding an animal from the petting zoo array that we had. So the petting zoo should constantly move in a single direction. But because we will be traversing through a 2D array here and we'll have multiple for loops, I will keep the counter for this separate. And because the size of the 2D array would also remain equal to the petting zoo length, less than or equal, because uh, we are effectively, if you multiply them, it's the exact same number. Um, we will never exceed the limit of the petting zoo length. So I'm going to go ahead and return to an old convention that I will be practicing now and use INJ for our for loops. If anyone's been in a CS class, they would probably recognize what we're doing here. We're going to run this till petting zoo. Uh, Wait, we're not going to run this till petting zoo, sorry. We're going to run this till the length of group for our groups, because this goes through our number of rows. Um, I'm going to increment it one by one. Then the next one we're going to do, it is supposed to navigate through the number of columns. So this one will navigate and go through the petting zoo length divided by groups. Another handy way, though, considering this is a 2D array, is that instead of um, basically going ahead and writing petting zoo dot length divided by groups, we can instead go ahead and use result dot get length and set that as 1. So what this does is, since we have a two-dimensional array here, we can actually choose which dimension 0 or 1 that we want and get the length of that only. So this would basically give us the number of columns. We will increment this as well. And what we'll do here is, within the result array that we have, which for rows and columns, where we're going to start assigning, we will simply take this and start adding values from the petting zoo. And we will keep incrementing it every single time it runs through. The reason I've used the post incrementer there is that it will take this value of start, and once the value is assigned, it is going to increment this after it goes through. Lastly, we will return the result here. So we have our assign groups function ready as well. Of course, since we have our getting, well, we will need to return this when we call this particular function, we will have to make sure that we assign it to a variable. So I am going to keep this as empty for now because it's going to default to 6, but you can have a number here as well, which we will try out later on. Last thing we want to do is we want to print these out. So this again will be a type void. However, as the parameter, we're going to take a group here. So what we will do is with this particular um, with this particular function, we're going to have loops again to navigate through this entire uh, through the entire 2D array, and we will print all the groups out one by one. So what I'm going to do here is we're again going to have an ij loop. We will take the group, get the length of the row here by using the getLength function, incremented one by one. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to add my first print statement. We're only writing in the same line for now, so I haven't broken or added a line break here. But what I'm going to print here is just the group number once. So we will go ahead and include a group number here. And what this will do is it will just add a group number at the start of the line. So next thing we'll do, we'll open up another loop to navigate inside. This is going to navigate through all the columns, and I just realized I entirely forgot to add, well, it's supposed to check for I, so just fixing that loop there. I will now add our column length check here. Implement these again. And inside this one, what we will do is we will print out each element that we come across. So what we will do here is we will have another console.write where we will go ahead. We will add our element from this 2D array. Print that. And of course, once we're through with the entire row, we want to have a little line break for us. So I will add a line break here. And this in turn should print out a group for us. So what we will do here is I will add our print group, and we will send in this group that we've got here. So now that we've got our three primary functions, I'll add another little function after this, but let's do a test run and let's see what we get here. So before this, I'm just going to add another thing. I'll add a console, right? And we'll just print out school A once. All right, so just to test and see if everything is working all right. So let me go ahead, clear this up, and we will run this function. Looks like things are working well. We've got our
Excellent.
random set of groups available here. And yeah. By the way, I am loving the discussion in the chat. I just took a look on the right side.
Mhm.
A very interesting discussion and comments.
Right.
Yeah. By the way, folks, if you have any questions, it would be great to have them here. Now, what we're going to do is, of course, we mentioned that we can have multiple schools here, right? That we want to see this example come up for a group of schools. So I'm going to go ahead and do one thing. We'll create a new function here called plan school. visit, which will take string, school name, as well as um, do we need something else here? Yes, we do. We need our groups, right? So we'll take the groups here, and I'll again leave this as 6 for now. Just because if you do actually call this function without, well, a number, it should be able to work. So I'm gonna go ahead and shift these functionalities in here. And what we'll do is, actually, we didn't need to remove that. We'll just keep school name instead. And I will actually go ahead and do one thing here. I will add a console.write line just as a line break and an additional line break for us.
Aditya, what is this int
Mhm.
group is equals to 6? So in the second parameter, you are passing some values. So what does it mean?
Oh, yeah, as I was discussing earlier as well, when we used when we were creating the assign groups function, the reason we keep 6 here is so that if there is someone who, um, well, if they've not added a parameter inside this function, it will by default set the number of groups here to 6. It adds a default value for our parameter in case there is no input. If someone does, however, keep a different custom input, it will choose that instead. So it is
So
quite
you are
handy
saying
when,
so you are saying if someone is passing the value for these groups as well, so this groups will be overridden with that new value, right?
oh yeah, if there is a value available, it will prioritize that. It's just if
Otherwise,
someone
the
does
default
not
one.
add a value, it
Excellent.
helps out.
Thank you.
So let's do one thing. Let's try calling this function. I think we've got
So for
this
Lewis,
function.
one question. Lewis is saying that what is this comma in that string array? So basically, it is for the 2D. If you are using the 2D array,
Mhm.
then this is how we define the 2D array in C or programming language by using that comma. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. I seem to be getting an error here, but I'm not sure why that is. I'll just build this one. Sometimes we see these errors come
Right.
up.
Yep.
Um, it happens. Instead of keeping school, we'll just call school A once. I'll call these a couple of other times. Let me see. It's disappeared now. This happens all the time. We'll keep school B and we'll call three. We'll call three groups in here. And we take school C, where, just to be funny, we'll try 9 groups.
And this is,
So
I think, the real
let's,
use of all the methods. So here we are just calling the methods three times.
yes,
We have written the code only one time, and now we are using it three times.
exactly.
So I think this is a real use.
Each function has been written only once, if we
Yep.
notice. And we're going to try and see if this works. So I am truly praying at this point because it's a live demo. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. So
No
I
problem.
hope this works out.
Excellent.
And looks like we're getting a little issue. And that, let me double check why, because we saw 6 each single time, which is because I forgot to assign the number of groups here. Wonderful. I do actually have to assign these values here as well. So I'm gonna go ahead, we'll clear this up. I will try and run it now, and hopefully it all should work fine. Yes, it does. The first one, we've got 6 groups, where each group gets 3 animals. The second one, we've got 3 groups, where each group gets 6 animals. And then we've got the last one with 9, where each group gets 2 animals each. So there we have our function and our guided project. And I am so glad things are working. Awesome. Now, I guess since we've got this function, by the way, for anyone here, if you're looking and you're trying the guided project, you can rebuild this entire project through there as well. But we can probably proceed to questions now, if that makes sense. So I guess we should be okay to remove VS Code, but fortunately the demo works. Um, yeah, we're going to have some question and answers and officers now in case anyone has any queries here for us. So I'm just going to scroll up. Um, so the comma with the string, yes, that effectively refers to a two-dimensional array of string type elements. No worries at all, Louise. I remember when I had started learning programming, all of these seemed like very scary concepts as well. One thing about programming is that um, really more than just intelligence, it is a domain that comes with practice. So as long as you practice and work with these concepts and try to apply them, um, you'll be able to work with them in no time. But yeah, no, it's a great question. By the way, no question is invalid. Thank you so much for asking that.
Right. Just like we don't have any rough work in mathematics, so every question is welcome over
Exactly.
here, and you can ask anything because this is how you can clear your doubts.
Yeah, yeah.
And if you're learning all these concepts, then don't forget to take the C sub certification, which is available free of cost from Microsoft. And you can just visit the links that we have given in the chat sections, and you can also just have a look on this slide. Just go and visit there, and you can just get the certification completely free of cost. There is, and if you're completely new to C sub, then you can just go through all the modules, and you will get very good knowledge about the C sub concepts. And I think that would be your good to go concept.
I think the feedback on lists makes sense. Particularly, one benefit of lists comes when you have an unknown number of elements and you might need to constantly keep adding more and more and more. Um, However, since we had a fixed number of elements, arrays work well as well. An array, the reason we use arrays is also because when we're programming, arrays tend to be an earlier concept, and since we're achieving some of the same results, it might make this little project a little more beginner friendly. But yes, lists are very, very handy. Lists are definitely my favorite data structure when it comes to C Sharp.
True.
I have lost count of how many times I've used it, and
Mhm.
definitely we can use lists in a lot of ways there as well. I think one added advantage that I see of arrays is that since we have a fixed number of elements, you the program and the, well, the compiler knows exactly how much memory to allocate. Um, so it does have some performance benefits. So just arguments there, but considering that a lot of the listeners here are beginners, it's a handier data structure to just start with, and people can graduate forward, defining usage as they go on.
True. If you are having a fixed length, then I think it is always good to go with the arrays.
Exactly.
And remember, all the concepts that we're talking about methods here were just for the beginners, right? There are more you can do with the methods.
Yeah,
There are so many other concepts, like you can go with the generics. You can also use some async versions, async programming in these methods. Well,
exactly.
there are so many things basically, but this is just for the beginners. So don't think that this is all we
It's a
have in C
starting
sharp.
point.
This is just the
Yeah,
starting point.
exactly.
Right. Okay. Well, anything else? Any questions from anyone?
By the way, for any of us, if you do have questions, you might not want to ask in the chat, but you want to reach out, we've got our social handles for both of us listed here as well. So if someone wants to chat with us, us and ask questions, we can do that as well in the future. That should be totally all right.
Well, I
But
guess that is
I
all
think
from
if
our
we're not
side,
getting, yeah, I mean, if we don't have more questions right now, I guess we're at a good point of time to conclude this Learn Live session as well.
right? Well, thank you so much, everyone, for
So,
joining. It was very good to be here. I really like it. And talking to the live audience is always great because we can know what exactly is going on in the developer's mind. So it is always good to have a discussion with the developers. Thank you so much.
absolutely. And overall, a great audience. I think I was looking at the chat a lot. I was thoroughly enjoying some of the discourse. There are a lot of great points. And I look forward to interacting with folks here in the near future as well. Thank you so much and hope you all have a great day or evening wherever you are.
Yeah.
Take
Stay
care,
safe.
everyone.
Keep
Goodbye.
learning. Thank you so much. Yeah. Bye, everyone.